Wow. I am on my screen. But you were starting. Oh, okay. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Hope you can hear me and see me. Plenty of room up here too. You want to move up? So it's always interesting. It's always interesting where people sit. You know, and like Regan said, my parents told me to sit up front, that sort of thing too. And but it is kind of interesting that it's group dynamics and psychology where people sit in a room. So I bet you could write a doctorate thesis on that. So I'm sure they have. So again, thanks for coming out. We appreciate it. We do have some refreshments in the back. If you want to help yourself with that, Beth was handing out some cards on some surveys that we are taking. We really do appreciate and ask for the public's input on these issues. We're going to talk about public safety tonight, but we also had a number of meetings on street maintenance and funding for those as well. So, and regardless of whether we have a survey or not, we're always open to getting input from the public. You can go online and our email address is on there for the council, and that goes directly to all of us if you have issues and concerns. And one other thing I mentioned is our Covington Connects app. If you don't have that downloaded, it's a way of sending issues directly to the city council and to the city itself, say things like potholes or abandoned vehicles, things like that you're interested in. It uploads it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Regan puts it on a list and you can track to see how it's being addressed, and you will get a response to those. So again, thank you for coming out. We're going to talk about public safety tonight. We have some presentations by our chief of police and then Regan as well. I'm going to talk a little bit at the end about some specific things that we're working on to address public safety, but we're going to hear a whole bunch here to go through, and then we'll open it up and get questions and answers. But we're a small group, so if you have questions, I would assume something that was speaking after. Anytime you have a question, you have to raise your hand. We'll be happy to answer it. So, is there anything else, Regan, that you wanted? Did you want to do public safety? Oh, I thought that was at the end, but I can do it now. So yeah, so we about say 6 to 9 months ago, the city council formed a select public safety committee, and Beth Porter, myself, and Joe Simomo are on that. And we've been talking for the last, well, about 9 months on this entire issue of public safety, and it runs the gamut from things like what we're seeing a rise in property crimes, but also to things like increase in potential homelessness and drug use as well. And we have started to put together a list of ideas and possible solutions to that again run the entire gamut from what we have consistently supported on the council, which is hiring new police officers, but to the other side of we recently hired what's called a community care specialist. This is a person that connects people that are in crisis with services that are already being offered in the city. So the thought being we want to prevent those from becoming emergencies or situations that require police presence. So everything in between those we are looking at, and tonight is an opportunity for you to come and hear kind of what we're doing, but also to give us your thoughts on how we can better improve public safety. So anything else on that? Got it? Got it? Okay, thanks, boss. All right. So Chief of Police Adam Easterbrook is up next. He's going to talk about some of the public safety statistics that we have.
Good evening. If you guys have questions at any point while I'm talking, just either shoot up your hand or just ask. That'll work really well for me. We're going to talk very quickly about our crime stats and where our crime occurs in the city. Most of our crime currently occurs around a business. So it'd be a business parking lot, inside a business, on the property of a business, to the point that it's the majority compared to residential. So if you have a house and you go to a business, you're more likely to be victimized currently in a business. So the city has been trying to find ways to address that. Again, the community care navigator is one of those pieces, because people that are committing those crimes often have other needs that need to be addressed, and we can address them prior to police intervention. That works a lot better. Just to give you an idea on this chart, this huge bump right here, that's, you guys recall when Washington State put out the unemployment during COVID, and I was a victim of this, is people claimed unemployment under other people's names. There were a lot of people, obviously, that had that happen, and that's that big spike there. And that always occurs at your home. But otherwise, that blue bar is occurring at the business, and the orange bar, red bar down the bottom is non-business crime. You can see it's kind of the last 3 years has been kind of even, and now we've recently more so gone over that. And at the end there, we didn't have enough data to really make it relevant to it. And again, to give you an idea, it's been rising at businesses. In 2020, it was 43%. We've moved up to 58% in 2022. So again, we're trying to find strategies to deal with crime at the business. So that way we can protect you and protect the business. This isn't about protecting business owners and that type of thing. It's about you. You're most likely to be the victim of a crime at the business, even though shoplifting, stuff like that, you think it's the business, it's a crime, but that cost is passed on to you. So we don't want you to think that, oh, it's a victimless crime. No, shoplifting is you the victim also. We calculated it based on where the properties are for businesses, took that to the crimes where they occurred. We tracked that, and we were able to come up with that. Okay, our general crime trends in the city of Covington, we are very low when it comes to crimes of violence or crimes against people. So we do not have a lot of that, which is good. We want to keep it that way. We've been kind of trending in the same bubble for a long time. We stay around about 11 or 12 a month. A lot of those are domestic violence. So you're not going to see those. You're not going to have a lot of times where you're out in public and somebody just comes up and assaults you. So we don't have a lot of those, which is good. We want to keep it that way. We do, however, have a lot of property crime, which is a regional problem. And you can see that in 2021, we had a big spike. That right here with the blue line. And then when we had data for the chart, that red line, so we're kind of tracking around the same trajectory. We've kind of had it come down a little bit below 2021, and I can't get it to put the chart because I'm not chart fancy. And the people that were didn't get it done in time. So we're trying to reverse that, but that's a lot of work. There's a lot of hurdles in our way for that. You can see the percent change between 2020 and 2022, or I'm sorry, 2020 and 2021 compared to 2020. So we have a lot of things that have gone up. There's some things that are going down. Fraud has been going down. This is for businesses only, so it doesn't include everybody else, which we actually have had a decrease in crime outside of the business areas. So that's a good thing that this is crime of business. Go ahead.
What is larceny?
Larceny is like a theft. So you can think of that as when somebody steals something out of your car, something steals your package off your porch, or they shoplift. So anything that involves the theft is a larceny. So a robbery is when you are using force to take that. So if I come up and you try to take my property and you use force, so you either punch me, threaten to punch me, point a gun at me, all those things would be a robbery. If you don't have that threat of violence or actual violence, it becomes a theft or a larceny.
That's where I think sometimes the public gets confused on saying, how did a shoplifting someone charged with robbery?
Right.
And that can be elevated if they start using force to steal that can of beer, whatever, that then becomes a robbery. And sometimes the public gets confused that the person was shoplifted a case of beer, but he used force to take that case of beer. The charges go up.
Right. So robbery is a legal term. So you have to be, like, a lot of people will say my house got robbed. That's different. Like in our state, the crime is burglary. So if your house is entered and somebody goes in there and commits a crime inside your home, it's a burglary. If they enter your home and don't commit a crime, it's a trespass. But there is kind of an intent when you go inside a home. And same with robbery. Robbery involves force, either to take the item or retain it. Go ahead. That would be a mail theft that would usually fall under larceny. So, and then there may also be included in vandalism. If they just damage your mailbox, like, people with joyride, run around and smack the mailboxes. Right, to take your mail, right, so that'd be under the larceny. Most of these are reasonably, I'll kind of explain simple assault and aggravated assault. So assault is anytime you basically are touched, you don't want to be, that can be an assault. There can be injuries with a simple assault. So any kind of minor bruising or a minor cut would be a simple assault. Aggravated assault is when we're looking at stuff like broken bones, something that might require stitches, a concussion would be aggravated assault, or the nurse is assaulted, that's aggravated assault. Same with the police officer. So if they get assaulted, those are both kind of special categories. Any other questions on this slide? This one's Covington specific. So this is actually the most up-to-date statistics that we have. I pulled these just a few days ago, last Friday. So this is a year over year. So this compares us to where we were in 2021 to 2022. And this is for the city of Covington, obviously. Commercial burglaries are way up. Obviously, that's a huge, huge difference. And if you've noticed, places where the glass is broken, that's almost always going to be that particular crime. That is a massive regional problem that's not really being addressed. So we're having a lot of it. Residential burglaries, and like I was saying, crime at people's property is down a little bit. You can see we're down in residential burglaries. That means it's people's homes. Same with fraud and vandalism. So those are typically crimes that are more likely to impact residents. Larceny, which is inclusive of shoplifting, is down ever so slightly. So that's good. And we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing to address that here in just a minute. Auto theft, another regional problem, is way up. Robbery is another one that's way up. And then the other crimes, that can be a whole host of things. Go ahead. That would be graffiti. It would be someone smashing out your car windows, throwing a rock at your house. That type of thing would fall under vandalism. Yes. Yes. So that, yeah, you might be seeing a little bit of more graffiti, although the some of the steps that the city has taken with the clean team. Sorry, I'll get it right here. They've been going around and cleaning those pretty quickly. There's some places in Timberlane that have had it for a long time, and we're trying to work with the HOA to get those cleaned up, but that hasn't happened as of yet. So, but correct. Yeah, so these are stuff that we've either on viewed, so that means we saw it ourselves, or it was called into 911. Any other questions? Okay, to give you guys kind of a comparison, that worked within the same precinct. So if you didn't know, Covington is a King County Sheriff's contract. I pulled the other contracts that are in this precinct. So we're in the Southeast precinct. So that includes Maple Valley. And you can see they've had a little less of the commercial burglary, but one number I'd like to highlight, their crime is up 30%. I'm gonna go back to ours, it's up 2. So in some ways we were ahead of them, I think, with some of the crime before that, but they are catching us, sadly. And you can see kind of the same breakdown with things increasing, very similar to Covington. There might be a couple that aren't, that for us, that are increasing for Maple Valley, but there's kind of the similarities. Like I was mentioning, commercial burglary, that's up pretty big in Maple Valley as well. So there are some regional problems that are really difficult to address from just a city alone standpoint, but Maple Valley's having the same thing. Another one of our contracts with the sheriff's office is Newcastle, and you can see they also have the commercial burglary issue, but they kind of have the same issues with the crime increase. So any questions? Okay. All right, what have we been doing to combat some of the crime? We have been going to the business owners here in Covington and asking them for permission to trespass people that are not using the property as intended. So if you go to Safeway, you're there to shop or dine or whatever else is there. You know, I think Comcast is there to go, you know, to do those things. Mud Bay is there. So that entire complex is owned by, you know, a company or an entity or an individual. And so in order for us to remove people from the property, we need the permission of the business or the owner of the property. So we've been going around and getting that permission from the businesses beforehand, so we don't wait until it explodes into a massive problem. But we're trying to get it preemptively so that we can actually, when we see a problem or somebody calls in a problem in a parking lot, for instance, drug use, we can then go and say, you know what, you're now excluded from the property. If you return to this property, it will now be a trespass. And the reason we're having to do some of that is we cannot arrest for drugs anymore due to a Supreme Court case, and the legislative fix didn't allow us to arrest for it. We have to refer them to some kind of treatment thing that we have to do that twice before we can effect an arrest. And there's no real pleasant way to track that within the state at the moment. So we're not really able to do it. So we're trying to work around that by trespassing people. And I know people think, oh, that's a petty crime. Why are you guys doing that? Well, because it's our only tool that we have to address the problem. So it's not that I want to just kick people out, but if you're doing stuff that doesn't belong on the property, we're going to trespass you.
And part of that use of that tool is many of these trespassers that I understand are repeat trespassers. Right. So you're getting this proactive approval because we have a relationship with these people. We know that they're doing things that they should not be doing. So it makes it quicker that so the police officers don't have to call, find it. They're like, we've been here several times. We know that we have authority now to trespass. Wrong or you're arrested.
Yep. So we do the same thing with shoplifting. If we catch you and you're shoplifting, we trespass you from the property. That does not go to say that we don't offer them services. We typically don't just trespass you the first time we come into contact you. We usually try to offer you services. The community care navigator that the city has hired, or specialist, excuse me, is going to be someone that we employ to help us with some of these problems, so we're not dealing with the same people over and over again. But it's not something that we can fix necessarily with trespassing, but we can at least put a dent in it. I think I know a lot of business owners have told me personally that, hey, we feel like there's less people just hanging around doing nothing. We feel like it's been cleaned up a little bit more. So in that way, we have made some progress. So that's been really good. The second thing we've been doing in addition to that is shoplifting emphasis. We've done those with Fred Meyer, Marshalls and Home Goods and Home Depot. And we are more than happy to do those with retailers that are willing to put the time and effort in to partner with us to do that. To date, I think we've stopped or prevented, with the help of the retailers, a little under $10,000 worth of theft. And that's just with 4 emphasis. So we're more than happy to do those. So we will continue to reach out with retailers to do that. That's been a fairly effective tool for us. We're not making like a ton of arrests, but it seems to have a preventative effect. So that's even better. We don't have to arrest you. That works out. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, what do you do with Fred Meyer? You have the cameras outside? Or?
Yeah, I'll explain it. So what we asked is the retailer to provide loss prevention. So they, most of these retailers are working with the bigger retailers because they have the most theft. So they will provide their loss prevention officers to work inside the store, and they will surveil people that they believe are committing a crime or about to commit a crime. They'll watch them with cameras inside their thing or with their people. And during that time, they'll wait till they exit the doors, and then they're on the phone with us. We dedicate a car to that so that they can just telephone communication, come up, make an arrest right as they're leaving the door. That way we don't have to wait for the 911 call and then us to get dispatched, which adds a couple minutes to it and makes it a lot less likely that we catch them. So we just dedicate 2 officers to that during a 4 to 6 to 8 hour period. And the more the retailer puts into it, typically the better the result. So if the retailer has 3 or 4 loss prevention, they don't typically get as better as when you have like 6 or 7. So Fred Meyer has had the most successful ones, but they typically have 6 to 8 of their loss prevention that are there working on it. But it is pretty effective because I think that they report to us that the theft goes down after we do it. So there's been an effect. So any other questions about those? There's some more stuff we'll talk about here in a second. Okay. I mentioned we do some outreach. We have the Salvation Army Street Team. I've been in law enforcement for almost 15 years. Been dealing with homelessness that entire time. I feel like that's one of the better outfits to get you off the street. One of the problems that some of the places have is they will continually, give you a tent and all this stuff. It's like, we don't want to enable you to continue to be homeless because it's not really good for you. So this group here with the Salvation Army is very good at trying to meet people where they are, but then having them take steps forward to get housed. They put a lot of effort into contacting people that are in cars because they're kind of like one step away, and then working to get them into housing. We also partner with the Catholic Church, the city does, which provides safe parking for people who don't have a home to live in but have a car, so they can go there, they can hook up to power, and doing those things. If I'm not mistaken, I think they're full right now. Last I talked to them. So there is a need for some of that, but we do partner with the Salvation Army. It's actually been effective to getting some people off the street. So, which in theory should make it a little bit easier on us to do law enforcement. I mentioned the clean team earlier. Jennifer Leeden, she is awesome. There's a big effect in keeping your area clean because people don't want to make something that's clean dirty. I don't know if you've been like I know when I go to a really clean house, I feel guilty if I leave like a dirty plate out. It's kind of that same concept. If it's really clean here, we don't, we're not going to get people in here that are going to do things that are going to make it dirty. When you leave something really dirty and filthy, people feel free to come and do bad things there. I mean, there's certain areas in Seattle I've been where it's just disgusting, and it's amazing what people will do there because they feel unable to. So, go ahead.
And you'll probably talk about it, but all of these are additional eyes and ears out in the community. So Jennifer, if you haven't seen her, she wears a yellow safety vest and she's walking around town almost every day, picking up carts, identifying graffiti, picking up garbage, that sort of thing, but also contacting people. See if there are people sleeping behind the bush, getting them in contact with the city and making sure they're aware that there are services out there. But it is also Jennifer then saying, I'm seeing these types of things popping up around the community. So you may see her out there in her yellow safety vest. That's good. So say hello if you do. But all of these things are additional eyes and ears out there that can alert us to potential problems that we want to prevent from becoming criminal problems.
An example would be for Jennifer, and I'll get to your question in a second, is she sent me a picture of some graffiti that was actually gang graffiti. And we worked very quickly with the property owner to get that cleared up because we don't want to leave that out. The longer you leave that out, then the next gang comes and tags something else, and now you end up with gang problems. So we try to get those covered up very quickly. Go ahead with your question.
In our neighborhood, do we have a direct line to Jennifer or to?
So if you have a trespassing drug abuse issue, that's something that we should be doing with police. And that's something you can call 911 with. They may refer you to online reporting. It doesn't mean that it goes into the wormhole. We do follow up on a lot of those. Some of the stuff we can't, like if you're calling in for fraud, we don't have the detectives to investigate all those. But go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. On those types of issues, though, and I mentioned at the beginning, Vanessa, we do have the Covington Connects, which is our app, and you can report that right there. Saying I'm seeing graffiti or mailboxes that have been destroyed, or there's trespassing. But okay, great. That's one thing. One other thing I forgot to mention about Jennifer, she's been, correct me if I'm wrong, she's been the one collecting carts that are left all over the city. Yeah, and we collect those and bring them back here. And until recently, we've been charging those businesses to come back and get their carts because it's not a free service. It costs money to collect those.
So we're working on ordinance so that we can charge them.
right.
They've been working with us
Yeah.
really well, to pick them up, but we shouldn't have to be picking them up all around town either. But just that, Fred Meyer, as a result of this painting and what we're doing, just put new wheels on the cart so that if you don't go to the checkout stand, the cart won't roll outside. It prevents it. And so that's a huge, that's just.
And I saw a new tag in Safeway's carts too, something that is saying similar, saying you only go so far, so. So they're responding, because that is one of those things where carts are lining up, that makes the city look dirty and people are less likely to respect it, so.
Any questions before I move on? Yes, go ahead.
Every weekend it's out and late at night, early in the morning.
Where-
One shack, several counters of other weapons. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, and have you guys called 911 about it? Okay.
no, because we can't pinpoint exactly where it is.
So I would encourage you to call, so we will have an officer come and look. Because if we can figure out where it's coming from, we'll try to address it.
It's all different times of day.
Okay,
Too, because we were in that communion a few weeks ago, too, sit down back, and you can hear it north of us.
okay.
It's always the same area.
We're 170,
64 to 170.
67, 4, yeah, but it sounds like it's just up north.
Any water areas close there, or?
It's wooded, there's some wooded, but they built a home up there too, like the water.
Yeah, because I hear them fairly often. I talked to our old police chief about it. I'm just outside of the city and probably and it's them shooting coyotes.
Wow.
I don't think this is that.
No, because it's.
No,
Yeah.
it's somewhere different than what it is.
There's some
I
shooting
think
coyotes.
it's exactly someone shooting you or somebody else. or
Okay.
something else. You get in front of you. I don't
So-
know. That night.
At night? So we heard it during the day. Sounds like.
Yeah, occasionally, yeah, someone puts a shotgun.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's automatic weapon. Or semi.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to call us so we can come.
Yeah.
Nope, just, you should
Call
call
911.
911. Yeah, absolutely.
That's more for the
No.
code violations,
Yeah.
non-
Not,
crimes.
Call us, yep.
yes,
Right.
exactly.
After the fact.
Yep, and that's perfect for that. So, and I have an officer that goes through that pretty diligently. So that he's pretty quick about getting those. Same with parking. So you have parking. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, community care specialist Darren, he'll be getting pretty well spooled up here starting on the 1st of November. He's going to be out there offering resources and working with the police and other city agencies to make sure that people that need resources are connected with resources. So Darren's kind of our hub for that. This will be a good resource for people that are constantly calling 911 that maybe don't need the police or fire for that matter, but can be helped with mental health type stuff or other. So he's really excited to have him out there. We've started a resource day. That's the second Thursday of every month. So people that need resources, whether it be mental health, the food bank is out. There's some elderly care, blank on their name right now, but they all came, and that's for people, just anybody here to come and attend and find what they can use and benefit from. And we'd like to see people come to that that need services, so that we again aren't having to respond with 911 calls to help them. So that hopefully it can be a big benefit. Okay, and the last thing I'll touch on is crime prevention through environmental design, CEPTED. So I was talking about trash earlier and how when you have trash, you end up with other problems. So we don't want to have trash laying around. So CEPTED is trying to design and maintain an area so that you do not invite crime. So some examples would be, if I had a 6 foot tall bush, you could hide an entire person behind that, right? So part of the SEPTED principles is cut that thing down to 2 feet so that people can't hide behind it, and so that if anyone is driving through, they can see something like, well, that doesn't look right, and then call. Or for that matter, a police officer can see it and then address it if needed. And so the concept of having things set up in a way so that people can see you have eyes on everything is kind of a SEPTED principle. So there's a lot of studies done. I believe it's Tampa Bay was one of the first cities to do this. They spent some money in designing a section of their city to meet these principles, and they had a pretty substantial drop in crime, up to 50%. So the city is trying to adopt some of those same things. We have the art that's out here. You can see along Kangley. That's another one of the SEPTED principles where we make it look beautiful. People are gonna not do stupid things there because it looks real nice. And that, you know, the mural down there looks really nice. So the hope is that if we can kind of incorporate that everywhere, we can start to have another drop in crime because people aren't gonna feel comfortable doing that.
I'll tell you, this year we hosted SEPTED training, brought in a national trainer. We trained almost all of our officers, several of our city planners, brought in people from a bunch of other cities, and so we've got several people certified to do this. Our police officers are working on it, we're working on incorporating it into our development codes and kind of things. So this has the potential to be good research.
Go ahead. And I'm gonna, Regan, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but this development, the one the city hall's in, the owner has actually incorporated a number of those in. So you'll see art around here. You see the statues out there. SEPTED says if you have statues that look like people, you're less likely to see crime because they're psychologically cued to think there's someone here watching. So those statues are both, yeah, those statues are there. They're pretty, but they're also serving a crime prevention aspect as well. So that's something I think is really important. Is we don't even notice it, but it does have that psychological effect of, and oh, there's a human presence here. So, anyways,
It's training versus it's waving canopies, lighting.
Yeah, and I mean, did you have a question? Okay. Yeah, and so I mean, and to your point too, there's actually some studies that if you just put something that looks like eyes in the window of business, it actually has that same effect. It's like, oh, somebody's watching. And you know, it's kind of the evil does things in the dark. It's like we want to kind of either, you know, address that with lighting, address that with people watching, whether that be just a perception of people watching or actually people watching. So some other things they do is they design it so that people are kind of funneled into an area that makes them feel like they're being watched. And when you feel like you're being watched, you're less likely to act out and less likely to cause problems. So as Regan said, the city's invested some money in working to get the police officers trained, and I think almost all of us are, except for the brand new people, and incorporating that into future planning with the city. So I think it's been effective so far. I mean, we've had less issues in places that we've had. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so the cards with the blue lights at the top, yeah, those are our big camera system. And those do have an impact on crime. And those are being paid for by the businesses themselves, so it's not something the city's doing. I know Fred Meyer did it, and we stopped having catalytic converter thefts in their parking lot. And so there are some big benefits to it. But I think some of that can be kind of muted once people realize that it's just a camera system. It doesn't actually call anybody. It doesn't alert anybody, but it is nice after the fact because they do have high quality cameras. So, right. Yes. All right. Any other questions? And one thing before I turn it over is our officers have also made a lot of efforts to be more proactive in some of the work. There was a law change in March, which allowed us to make more physical arrests and detain people using force, which we were not there for about a year. And our arrests have doubled since that law was changed back to the way it was. But our crime has not changed that much. So some of it is our officers have been very proactive about coming out, and they've come out and trespassed people that are, oh, hey, that guy's over there. Looks like he's trying to hide the fentanyl. He was just smoking, and they trespass. They don't wait to be called on some of those things. And then when they find those same people in those same parking lots that they were trespassed from, they're arresting them, and then we're booking them, and that's been really helpful. So, all right, yeah, go ahead.
So, I'm very interested in the part proactively, but part also meant hard when you're not. So, what's the difference?
So right now, if we're fully staffed, we have 17. We're not. We're sitting at 13 currently. We're adding one more in a few weeks, so we'll be one patrol officer short. We're short a school resource officer, and we're short a sergeant. So we can live with a sergeant for a while. That just means I get double duty, which that's fine. I can live with that for a while as long as we have people on the street. And we should be able to get people in the street here pretty soon. So we're almost full on that part of it. And we'll get there pretty soon. But to that end of it, that has a slight impact. We typically will just pay overtime to have people work extra, and we have some people that have been really helpful in doing that, because otherwise we have to mandate people to come work for us. And we are blessed in terms of being part of the sheriff's office, in that we have a wide pool of people to select in terms of overtime. So if I have a spot that none of my officers can work, someone from the King County Sheriff or any of the other contract cities can come work for us for the evening. So sometimes you'll see a car that's not Covington. I used to work for Burien for a long time before I came out here. I'm pretty happy to be here and not Burien, so it's good. And that's not a slight on Burien. I like working here, but it was a fun place to be a police officer, but that's not necessarily the fun place to live. But to that end, we can kind of grab people from everywhere to work for us, and that's been something that's been really nice. Go ahead. So there's a whole host of reasons. One is the King County Sheriff's Office is short about 100-ish people right now. And there's lots of reasons that you could go into as to why that is. It's just, that's the case right now. That is a piece of it. Yes, so that's part of it. Yep. That's correct. So,
I think you should emphasize that we're a contract city, so our officers come from King County Sheriffs.
Yep.
And we put them in our uniform and we pay for them, but we hire our officers through King County. So we're in some, yeah, and when we hire through the officers that they hire as well. So there are some limits on what we can do.
There at what point we'll have our own,
So that's,
bigger, whatever.
it's something we're talking. Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things for us starting subcommittee is what can we do? What are our options? And that was one of the things that we looked at was, would it make sense for us to have our own municipal police department and or partner with other cities instead and come out of the contract? And I'm sure Regan will expound on that, but it is much more costly for us to do that. And yeah, he'll go into the other financial pieces to that, but that's the downside to doing that. Gain control, but it is going to come with a cost. Yeah.
So we are at that.
But it's always on our back of our mind.
Adam, would you talk to how much it costs to hire an officer?
How much it costs to hire an officer?
Yeah.
So to put an officer through the academy, you have to pay them for 6 months of wages, and you may not be able to use them. So we have King County, the Sheriff's Office has a washout rate that's 40%, somewhere in that range. So they don't make it, and we've got to pay them for 6 months to go through the academy. Some people don't make it out of the academy, and some people make it to the street, and they find this is probably not the job for them. And that's okay. It's not a job for everyone. Not everyone can do this job. There's a whole host of reasons that people don't make it, but in some ways it's better for them. And it's better for us if we don't have someone that's a liability in that way. So there is significant cost in trying to hire someone to come over here to work. And that's for new people. For a lateral, which is someone that's worked elsewhere, especially if it's within the state, it's a lot less expensive. We still have to train them for at least 2 months, 3 months to get them up to the way we do business here and then go on with that. But
I think we can direct that to the Sean, the average cost is about $250. So that's all.
That's ongoing.
Fuel, and salary.
So your council wants to get us up to 17 officers too, but finding that additional funding is kind of well, so. Yeah. So, sorry, go ahead.
no, any other questions?
I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. No, you guys' support, it means a lot. I know obviously it's been kind of a difficult time the last few years for a lot of officers. Some officers have left the profession because of it, but your support is really a blessing. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. One of the wonderful things in Covington, regardless of what's going on regionally, is we've got a city council that public safety is their top priority. And that's important. And I think that's why our officers really love working in Covington, because there's just a ton of support here. So I got the fun assignment to talk about taxes tonight. So anyway, we got to pay for all this, right? So before I get into that too much, I want to just go over this, our public safety budget, just kind of show you how that's been evolving over the last several years. You can see, I'm going to come away from the mic a little bit. In the last 8 years, we've increased our public safety budget by about $2.4 million. And that's a huge amount in a city like Covington. And that's hiring new officers, getting involved in new public safety programs. It's also contract cost increases, right? Our contract with King County Sheriff, that increases. We've got some really large increases coming in the next 2 years by about $1.1 million in the next 2 years that will be added onto our contract costs. And that's right now the price of doing business. But we talked a little bit about, one second, so we talked a little bit about creating our own department, and is that financially feasible? That gap is shortening a little bit, but it's still, as we went to several different cities that used to be part of whether King County contract or another contract, and they started their own, it was more expensive for them and still is than what our contract costs are. They did it for local control, right? We didn't want the county or whoever controlling policy on how we police. And so those are like Federal Way is one of them. So,
Sorry, you were no, remind me, you were just talking about.
why don't you
talk? So one of the things we talked about becoming independent in our own police force. Let's talk about the benefits that we get from the contract. That
Sure,
it isn't
there's-
all. Yeah,
there's huge benefits. One, just the professionalism, right? They're coming from a highly trained organization, regardless how you feel about King County. We get wonderful officers from the King County Sheriff's Office. Well-trained, a lot of resources. And like Chief mentioned, we can pull from hundreds of different officers around the county when we need help. During some of the protests that we had a couple years ago, we were able to call the county and they brought out 30 something officers out here to help out, right? Those are some benefits that we have. A huge one for a city is the indemnification that we get as a contract as opposed to having our own, where if we've got legal issues, we say, well, go deal with the county. And that's a huge benefit for contracting. So there's benefits both ways.
But they also have access to some of the resources that we wouldn't have, helicopters.
Well, we have to
unit.
contract for those,
Yeah,
right?
and that's part of that contract.
That's right.
Those additional resources that we would have to pay for it in the house if we want those types of things. So there are, I don't want it to seem like there's no benefit for staying.
Yeah.
Contract, there are, and that's the
Great.
balance we're trying to navigate here. So what do we do?
So the point of showing this is just, the city council, it's the department that has gotten the highest percentage of increased revenues put into it over the last several years. But at the rate we're having to continue to fund public safety, it's totally unsustainable for us as a city. And so part of the commission of this city council subcommittee was, we've got to evaluate sources of revenue. How can we do this? And so these are the available sources of revenue that we have as a city that can help pay for public safety. So the first one is utility taxes, a small percentage increase on the utility tax. It would bring in nowhere near enough to hire one officer, okay? Admissions taxes. We have an admission tax on the book, but we don't have anything that could actually be charged admission tax. So we bring in $0 for that. So that would not help them with whatever. Oh, when you go to a movie theater and buy a ticket, there's a tax on that. And so we don't have that. So those kind of, there is, yep, yep, oh, yep. And that's why we got it on the book. So there's a 1-year excess property tax levy. Those are really utilized to just fund one-time costs. Obviously, funding public safety is ongoing, so that's not a feasible option. There's a business and occupation tax, a B&O tax, a public safety sales tax, and a multi-year levy lid. So as we went through all of those, it was those last three that I mentioned, that could provide sustainable revenue options to really start covering our increased contract costs, but also boost up our programs and hire additional officers in the department. So I'll talk about each one of those briefly so you understand what they are. So public safety sales tax, this is a sales tax of up to 0.1%. It's at least a third of the revenues have to be used for criminal justice or public safety. If this was what was used, all that we received would be going towards public safety, but the law requires 1/3. This also would raise almost $500,000 for the city. So that's, a 2-officer thing without taking into consideration our increased contract costs. When this law was drafted, the counties must have done some serious lobbying because they get 15% off the top. So if Covington voters pass this, King County gets 15%, and we get 85% to help pay for public safety. What's that? Yeah, we didn't either. So this is must be a voter approved tax. Yeah. I think that's 100%. Yeah, mine's 50%. Good question. So the next is a multi-year levy lidlet. So if you're not aware, you probably are, but in Washington State, there's only property taxes can only be raised by 1% per year per state code. A levy lid lift lets you go higher than that for a certain amount period of time. It must be voter approved. The council can set the rate. So let's say we need $2 million to get our police department up to that, so that they set that levy lid lift rate at that amount. Again, it must be voter approved. And then for 6 years, that is charged on top of each other until you get to the rate where you're bringing in that additional amount each year after that 6 years. And then that's your new baseline. And then you can't go above the state allowed 1% after that. Washington State has some very convoluted property tax laws. So if you have any questions on this one, let me know. But that would be how that property tax works, and how it's different than the 1 year levy lid. This multi-year one builds up a new base to what you need to accomplish that ongoing funding that was the goal. And then the next is a business and occupation tax, or a B&O tax. This is something that can be done by a city council. It doesn't need to go to a vote unless it's more than the 0.2%, okay? So this is on retail businesses. It can be on gross receipts. Actually, there's a couple here. So for retail businesses where B&O tax is based on gross receipts, the maximum rate cannot be more than the 0.2% of those gross receipts or income, unless it's approved by a majority of simple majority. So the rate that we've discussed as a subcommittee, this has not gone to the city council yet. It's only been talked about with the subcommittee, is a 0.2%. And that would bring in between 1.5 and $2 million. It's hard to gauge for sure. We'll get into it a little bit, but there's exemptions that you can put in place. So certain businesses with a low threshold of profits, you could exempt from this kind of thing. So we don't know the exact amount, but somewhere around there. So this would be imposed on the value of products, or gross income, or could be, or on the gross proceeds. We've talked about the gross receipts of the business that this would be relying on. So there's several classes, and this is important when it comes to the exemptions. There's manufacturing, wholesaling, retailing, and then services. There are the different classifications within a B&O tax. So under the exemptions, the council, if they implement a B&O tax, can put in these exemptions for certain businesses. And it's fairly common. There's a lot of cities around the state and in the region that have a B&O tax. And that's kind of a list of some of the main ones you see. It can be different ones, but the thing, however you charge that tax or place the exemptions, it has to be the same within each of those categories that I talked about that last bullet point. It can be different in different categories, but it has to be the same in each category. So nonprofits are exempted, adult family homes, ride shares, insurance businesses, and a few other, actually there's a lot of other things, but these are just a couple of examples of the B&O tax. Any questions on those sources of revenue? I know it's a headache even talking about them, but be happy to address them. Yeah, Sean.
So I think just to underline and reiterate what the city controls and what we can raise, there's a very, very few options. So we basically put forward the three that we do have some control. And so what you're seeing is those are the ones that we directly can influence. And two of them, we have to go to approval. One of which we can do councilmatically. Any other potential funding would either have to come from the state or the feds or the county. So that is indirect funding. So just think,
Which we don't get.
yeah. And I think it's just important to know that we have very few options on that. How we get these funds at the city level. So, yeah, good point.
Any other questions then? So some of the recommendations that we've talked about, you know, if one of these revenue options are passed or adopted, what can we do with it? And so SEPTED that Chief Easterbrook talked about, we want to really start training our businesses more so that they're aware of it and providing help there. We'd love to add 1 to 2 more detectives. Right now we have 1 detective here, and that's a busy job. We're not able to get to everything that needs to get attention. Provide training and support to our loss prevention officers, and provide additional emphasis patrols at businesses. Adam talked a little bit about that, and he talked about how successful they are. I mean, it's incredible. You put our officers out there for a couple hours on those emphasis patrols, and they're making several arrests, recouping thousands of dollars worth of merchandise that was stolen, or attempted to be stolen during those couple of hours. So we'd love to hire a business liaison officer, and that's important as we mentioned tonight. The majority of our crimes are happening in our business core, and to have someone dedicated to really working with them, training our businesses, having a straight avenue to, hey, we need an officer out here now, I think would be really valuable. Hire a community service officer. We did hire our Darren that Adam talked about, but that's potential for another officer to help work in those regards. And then of course, cover increased public safety costs. Like I mentioned earlier, that's a big hit to the Covington's budget. In fact, we start to redline for 2023. We're just, the budget was just submitted to the council. They'll be deliberating on it all day on Saturday. So if you want another fun meeting, come to that.
In here.
Yeah, but by 2026, we start redlining. For 2023, we're having to dip in to reserves to help cover some of these increased costs. And so something's going to have to be done as far as revenue options if we want to increase our public safety presence. So those are the things we can do with it. And then I'm happy to take any questions, or Sean can talk about a survey we did, and then we can do a Q&A. If that works.
I'm gonna introduce myself. So I'm Sean Smith. I'm on the city council. I'm the mayor pro tem, or as my kids call me, the pretend mayor. So they try and keep me humble. So I introduced Beth, and then Debbie Harstock is also on the city council back there too. So if you have any questions afterward, you can come up and talk to us. So Regan's asked me to talk to you about our outreach to the business community. So we've been holding meetings like this for quite a while. And about 5 weeks ago, we had a similar one for the business community. Prior to that, the city council had divided up the city, and we each went out and took a section of the town and dropped off those postcards that you saw there at every one of our businesses here in Covington, and asked them to fill out their perception and their concerns and issues related to public safety. And we did receive 41 responses to that survey. And we were asking primarily about their perception of crime. Do they feel it's going up or down? Do they feel their customers feel that as well? And then we asked specifically about a B&O tax, because it would definitely impact them in particular. So as you probably can imagine, I'll go to the punchline. They do perceive an increase in crime in the community. They believe additional police officers would be helpful. And there's a mixed bag on the B&O. You get about roughly 50-50 on whether they would support a B&O tax. Now, it's interesting, we had 2 questions, one of which said, would you support a B&O that was specifically targeted for public safety? And that one was a little bit more towards no. But we had another one that was open-ended, would you support a B&O that was specifically targeted for a designated purpose? And that one was a yes. So I'm not quite sure how to read that, but I think what we took away, we had a public meeting, again, just like this with some of our business community. They recognize there's an issue. They recognize that additional resources are needed. And I think the theme that we got coming out of that, if it could be guaranteed that it was specific for public safety, there was general support for that. And so we've got some work to do in order to assure and work with the business community that if we did pass something like that, that it would be dedicated specifically to public safety. So they're aware of it. We continue to work out with them and reach out to them. And kind of what we walked away from that meeting is saying, right now we're at the beginning phases of this. There will be a report that's coming out, but we're open to all ideas. We all recognize that there's an issue. You've seen the budget numbers, and we can talk a little bit more of that. There's kind of a gap, as Regan has said, between what we currently have available and what we probably need to be sustainable. So any ideas on how we can bridge that gap, we're open to it. The council has made no decision on any of this yet. We will be presenting it shortly, but we're reaching out to all of you, and any good thought and good idea will not be turned away. So anything else you wanted from me on that, Regan? We just open it up to the questions now, and the survey results are available. We can get those too if you want.
Yeah, I was just gonna clarify too that I think, when there's some of the mixed answers, like I learned something as a perception that, oh, it's a B&O tax, they'll just gonna raise their prices and then for it. But in the service industry, particularly like dentistry and medical, where they're under contract to provide services at a certain rate, it's a little bit more challenging for certain businesses to be able to absorb that. So that might be, an example of if we move forward with something like this, but we want to try to make it fair for, if you have to go down that route. So it's not even just, but yes or no, like
Right.
there's a whole lot of other things to think about. As we're trying.
Yeah, that was news to me is, because that was one of the things that came out as we asked, okay, well, we were learning about, wouldn't you just pass these costs on to your customers? And as been said, some of the medical providers can't, because their insurance will only pay up to a certain amount. And so whatever is going, if the costs continue to go up, it's eating out of whatever that revenue they would bring in. So that was new stuff. That was really enlightening and helpful for us to put that in the hopper as we make decisions. So what other questions? So this is your opportunity to provide us feedback. And again, if you, right now, you can't think of anything, we do have the cards in the back. Please send us your thoughts if you think about it tonight. You're like, whoa, I should have said this. Yeah, we're again, haven't made a decision, but yeah, we'd love to hear your ideas that we've got here right now. Yeah. For the set 10? No, I don't know. That's a good idea.
We wanted to talk about it, in our downtown for this community that I think definitely.
Yeah. And we do have regular interactions with all the HOAs in the city. We do Purple Light Nights, we do National Night Out. And so if you haven't taken part in that, that's a great opportunity to go out, meet with them, city council members go out, our police officers go out, our public works, and talk about what the city is doing. But it's a good chance to get your issues in front of the police department and the rest of the city, because it makes it more real if we're actually physically out there and you can see, hey, look, this curb needs to be fixed, or this is the place back here where we see drug use going on. So it makes it puts it more front and center for them. So, but yeah, any idea on how we can raise our public safety in the community we're willing to look at.
And we talk about an ounce of prevention being worth a pound of cure, and I think that's true. I know our team right now, like Megan said, is focusing on the downtown corridor, even just from an personnel standpoint, like putting the resources where they're most needed right now. And in a perfect scenario, everybody would get that training and that resource, but we can't do all of it at once. We have to kind of do it as well.
Real kind of weight in the sector. And the nature of it, I know you like to one of the officers to come out and talk about it for 15, 20 minutes. There's some things on there to do. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's
One of the other things I think that we should emphasize tonight that come out of this is the city is looking at the things that it can control and it can work on. But if we're going to, as the chief said, get a hold on us as a regional problem, there are things at the individual level all the way to the state and feds that we're part of this solution, but there are other things that other entities need to do in order to help us. So just know that we are looking at everything we have control over, and we're gonna work on that. But there are other avenues that sometimes we want to point you toward as well to say you might want to talk to them as well. So, sorry, did I see a hand over there? No? Okay, nothing else? Yeah, well, that if we go out to yeah, if we so you notice those first two, we'd have to go out for public vote, and that would be something we'd have to really work on. It's a public campaign in order to show the public where that funding would go and assure them that it would go for public safety, how much of an impact it would have, and then it would have to go on the ballot and we'd have to get that passed. And that's 50 plus 1, doesn't have to be 2/3. So it's about as heavy a lift, yeah. But yes, that would be something we'd have to do. Right. Yeah.
I think Covington isn't one of those places. I have not heard anyone that has said that.
Right.
Wouldn't.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
But in the breath, if you can turn it on here,
Yeah.
the benefit.
rewrite that narrative there.
Yeah, I just want to bring how that works.
Yes, Yeah.
So our city prosecutor, which started in January, has been doing a great job. And that's for misdemeanor level crimes. So you have things like trespass, and we recently started working on enforcing the unlawful transit conduct, stuff which you can't do with the King County prosecutor because they won't prosecute that, but our prosecutor will. So we've been able to then use that to actually take action against people smoking fentanyl on the bus stop. Again, we're going to offer services and do all that stuff first, but it is a tool in the back, and they know that because we will make them arrest. There are some felony level crimes that we have no control over. That's done by the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, and I don't have hard data on it, but we're, for like a car theft, if your car gets stolen and we recover it and there's people in it, the chance of getting prosecuted is less than 50%. So.
but I think what you said is a really good point. We are looking at those things that we have control over and can prosecute on. And so the chief's been working with those, and correct me if I'm wrong, those trespassing violations, we can prosecute on those. So we've done these proactive things in order to basically make it so we have that additional tool that we have control over. So like the chief says, it's not a felony, but it is, they're going to go before a judge. So yeah, we're working on all these things. So what else? Yeah, didn't remind me. Yeah, we just brought that up and we just strengthened our panhandling.
Well, we noticed, a couple months ago.
Yeah.
We seem to just appear.
Right.
You want to talk about how we address it?
Yeah, so it's a crime to do it in the public right of way. So in the roadway, it's a crime. In the sidewalk, it's a crime. If you do it at a business where you didn't get permission beforehand, which businesses don't give the permission, then it's also a crime. Do we arrest for that? No, we try to warn people, but we usually, it's a warning, then it's a criminal citation. So we're not gonna book you unless it's like the 4th or 5th time. Then yeah, that's one of those, you're just not gonna respect the laws, then we're gonna have to take you to jail. So we haven't taken anybody to jail yet, but we have, I believe, issued at least one criminal citation on it, and that person hasn't come back. So there hasn't been as much lately, but
Right.
we did have a really bad run of it there for about a month.
Yeah,
So-
and we addressed that and saw them walking down the middle of the street, panhandling, and we got on that really quickly. The officers went out and addressed it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, have you seen it lately? Because it was a couple months ago that I haven't seen it lately. Yeah, good.
Oh.
Yeah, that's an interesting, I just saw that on the news too, that's a scam. Yeah, I thought that it's actually, yeah, I thought, wow, that guy is good, but it's actually a scam. What else? I don't want to shut this off, but just want to reiterate from the city and the police department and the city council, we could be doing a whole host of other things on Monday night, coming out and actually participating in how to make the community better. It really does make a difference, and we really do appreciate your time. So yeah, us too. Yeah.
I think one thing that the council may appreciate more, out of those three revenue.
Oh, yeah.
Both of your revenue, for the criminal justice sales tax, or King County.
Right.
Would there be a preference?
Right.
Or did any of those, like, that's the one they should do, or thoughts there? The public safety sales tax?
Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree.
I'll get to
I know the tax is going to that, my community, I would we're saying, I've heard it all the things, all working, right? And it's a big fund of money to help all these people who help, right? Instead of, I know it's going to.
Right.
I kind of like. The one, I like it too, the optics of it look good.
Right.
Right, it doesn't bring in, it brings in about a fourth or a fifth of what the other options do, so it's, we can't do.
But to start,
Business conversation, I think is great, especially when you have more people, other than new place.
We're gonna bring in a lot more.
Yeah. That would really help.
exactly, yeah, and that's always the balance, yeah, is does crime go so high that businesses leave, well, then you raise that tax, do they, still leave, so, yeah.
Sean, our biggest player, our biggest player that would contribute the most, they're one of. And so that would be, I met with the chamber as well, and it's the message. If the council puts us to public safety, we're not. And so that was something.
Yeah, I think it is the smaller mom and pop organizations that will have a little bit more of a challenge with that, but I mean, there's exceptions, and maybe we do a little bit of all of it, so that it's kind of shared equally, like,
Businesses, they benefit too, because you don't feel unsafe.
Right.
well, that's what some of them have said, that, they know that they're gonna pay for it one way or another, either in their higher insurance rates, and have to, fight a problem or try to prevent it.
Yeah.
So, where did it?
Right.
Well, that's kind of, why we spend a lot of time on the B&O tax, because, as Chief Richard shared, our crimes just keep increasing in downtown our business. So it seemed like a logical choice to pursue that, but, again, nothing's been decided. Right.
And we have had sales tax levies props on the ballot in the past, and they haven't passed.
That's never been.
There's never been one passed. Most of those streets, there were like 3 different street levies, like every 2 or 3 years. So
Close.
it's. That could be. Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Right.
Sure, that's understandable. Mhm.
At least,
You've identified the most difficult challenge.
Right.
And so we hope things like this, and we get people come out, which is great, but yeah, we love to have 1,000 people, right? And really get that word out. And it's hard too, because the last time we put that on the ballot, the council said, we'll remove the card tax.
Yeah.
If this gets approved, a 0.2% sales tax increase, which makes 140,000 people coming to Covington, paying on the streets, not the residents who are card tax, right? But the state won't let us put that on the ballot, it will remove the card tax. Right, and so it becomes this real challenge. We did, and we also are restricted in the city. Once we submit it to go on the ballot, we cannot promote it, or we can do like fact finding sessions, but we can't say this is.
You should vote for it.
We can't. We're not allowed.
Right.
So it becomes
Beholden beyond.
So y'all might be getting.
But before we go on the ballot, we could go out to HOA meetings and talk to, your communities that way. So for this one, I think there are some additional things we can probably do between now and then to make it more likely that it will pass. But again, we haven't made a decision, so we're still looking at it. If you have any other feedback, go ahead. Yeah.
just another suggestion.
Right.
Families of these people. But then probably maybe another source, if you could do this, WebEx, or addition to.
Did we record this? We did. So there will be a recording available and you can take that link and send it to your friends, but yeah. It'll be, yeah, we can attach that to the video, but it'll be on, so, yeah. And it'll go up on our social media sites and forward those, that sort of thing. Yeah, just spreading the word. Yeah, and we recognize that that's a hurdle for some. We are having a budget meeting this Saturday, so you can come and talk about other things if you want. Public safety will be part of that, but all of our other revenue options. You know, one of the things that also comes out when you get on the city council, you learn about what a city can control and what it can't. And so one of the things that often comes up, well, you know, you have this budget, we'll move money from this pot to that pot, and you know, public safety should be number one, and put the money in that. And we do, we have the general fund that there are some things that we can move around, but there are other funds. So for say parks, for example, many of our new parks are funded through grants that we get from the state or the feds. We can't move that money around, but explaining that to the public is difficult. You've got, say, for example, $1 million for a new park. Well, we don't need to put it over here. We got a grant for that park. And so doing more to explain the limitations we have on one, raising money and what we can move around is something we need to do a better job of too. So any help we can provide on that too is greatly appreciated. So.
And we do, right now, we currently plan on giving a presentation at the November 11th city council meeting. The subcommittee will be, it's on the agenda. At all of our city council meetings, you can zoom in. If you can't make it in person or you just want to be a part of it, you can pop on and off how you want. So we'll try to be promoting that on some social media too, just for people to know, but
We do, we put the agenda.
yeah, and try to augment that as council members too.
Well, there's still snacks in the back there. You want those? So please help us out. Yeah, just anything else we get here? You're welcome. Yeah, thank you. Really, it's up to you. Thank you.